you, actually. Oh, sorry. Thank you to the band. So you have a bass. We lost the drum, but we gained a bass. A round of applause, I think, for the wonderful live music. And good recovery on the last song as well, I have to say, by all of us. So I'll have the slides up this time. I gave them to Dylan. Dylan, I can flick forward. I just wanted to, oh yeah, the reading, actually. Ask Colm to do the reading. If you could.
Kingdom of Heaven and Earth. If Adam and Eve had obeyed God, they would have brought the kingdom of heaven on earth. What would that kingdom be like? Adam and Eve were created sinless with the potential for perfection, and they were to grow into perfection by obeying the law of God. While they were growing into fully perfected man and woman, their relationship was to be that of brother and sister. They were expected to set the true tradition of brotherhood and sisterhood. What is perfection? Perfection is man's total union with God. A man is supposed to be the temple of God, in which the Spirit of God dwells. Such a man is divine, as God is divine. That man is holy, as God is holy. Jesus was the first such perfect man. This perfection is the state that Jesus was speaking of when he said, "Believe me that I am in the Father, and the Father in me." John 14:11. When you become one with God, his divine power is yours, and you shall be perfect as God is perfect. Therefore, Jesus set as man's goal to be perfect as God is perfect when he said, "Believe me that I am in the Father, and the Father in me." When you become one with God, his divine power is yours, and you shall be perfect as God is perfect. Therefore, Jesus set as man's goal to be perfect as God is perfect when he said, "You therefore must be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect." God created one male and one female. Why? After their reaching the state of perfection, God wanted to bring them together into one heavenly couple through the blessing of heavenly matrimony. God intended to begin his kingdom with Adam and Eve as the first husband and wife. If that had become a reality, then God's blessing to be fruitful and multiply would have been fulfilled. By having children, Adam and Eve would have become the God-centered true father and true mother, the true parents of mankind. If Adam and Eve had formed this first God-centered family, from them would have come a God-centered tribe, a God-centered nation, and a God-centered world, ruled by God alone. Then perfection would have reigned from the beginning to eternity.
So I was reflecting, preparing for today's service on previous services, and particularly John gave a lovely service recently, and the Reverend Mother herself gave two very good services last week and a couple of weeks ago. And actually, it made me think that and reflect that we have a very high quality of sermons within our community. And it's always wonderful to get an insight, a takeaway from, the message that's there. Another service that actually was mentioned at that service was one given in Korea recently that Dr. Balcom asked everybody to watch. Now, I guess he had a special event for that. And when it was mentioned at that service last week, I felt, yes, I actually had thought at the time that I wanted to talk about that, but my week for giving the service was, it wasn't so immediate. So it went out of my mind. So I was very grateful actually to be reminded about that, because when I watched it, for me, it was a very profound talk. But I had different takeaways, I have to say, than even, you can flick it on there. Dylan, you had different takeaways to Mike Balcom about that. I mean, it tells the story, the pastor in Korea tells the story of Akim, I think his name is Akim, and how he after the victory of the fall of Jericho, when they walked around Jericho 7 times, the Israelites, and God granted them a fantastic victory. The walls crumbled basically. Um, they were kind of puffed up. They had won a great victory, and but afterwards, then the interesting part, which I didn't know about, they went and tried to take on this other city, AI. Funnily enough, it's called AI. I don't know how you pronounce that. AI. It's easy to remember. So they took on AI back in the day, 2000, 4,000 years ago, huh? Yeah, yeah. I knew James would like that one. But it didn't go so well, that one. They lost that. Flick it on again, Dylan. Um, they lost that um, battle. Yeah. And again. And yeah, so central, there's two themes in this service. One is the kind of the victory, the great victory at Jericho, when the walls of Jericho collapsed due to the faith of the Israelites, and then the defeat afterwards at Ai. And they were basically chastened by God. They were chastised by God for what my takeaway was, for their arrogance, basically. This often happens when we win a great victory. You can see it in sport as well. The next game after, or the next after scoring a goal is when you're most vulnerable. That's when you can concede, because you're basically you're not paying attention. But in this case, the Israelites were, I suppose, they saw the victory as their victory, not as God's work, God's hand, So you can flick it on again, Dylan. Basically, Akan, then the other theme is Akan. It seems to be tied up in the same story of the victory at Jericho and the loss in Ai. We have this figure called Akan, who I'd never heard of before. Just that shows you my biblical knowledge. But Akan seems to have took it upon himself to appropriate the spoils of victory from I don't know, was it from Jericho? Yeah, after the destruction of Jericho. He basically stole and took for himself. Can move it on again. And he's basically goes down as a demon figure in biblical history, somebody who's condemned and somebody whose grave, was can't even visit it. He's such a God chastised him so heavily that he's basically a byword for in the Jewish.
Cancelled.
Yeah, cancelled, exactly. So between AI and cancel, they were really up with the times 4,000 years ago. They were able to predict the times we're living in. So again, the severity of Achan's sin went beyond simple greed for material things. It was an act that disregarded Heavenly Parent's sovereignty. So again, the overriding theme for me is that God gave the victory, but then we, as mankind, the Israelites, we decided, the chosen people, that this was us, this was our greatness that had brought the victory. So I was reflecting on that, and I thought, well, the takeaway surely here is that after the great victory of the entrance to the Chunwon-gong, the palace, the heavenly palace, Chunjung-gong, then have we become complacent, or has something like I in my mind, when all this talk about entering the heavenly palace was being put out there before that, I knew it's not going to be that simple. The Kingdom of Heaven it's never like that. Kingdom of Heaven never comes the day after, and people who talk up these providential events, as I know why they do it. We have to kind of prepare our hearts and minds and make conditions whenever there's an important event, just like the Israelites, when they're preparing to go to the promised land of Canaan, they have to prepare. They have prepared through spending 40 years in wandering in the desert. Was it 120? They had to so many times, 40 years in the desert. It was a short journey, but it took them 40 years because it took them 40 years to learn the lessons of that God is trying to teach them as the chosen people. So the entrance is a symbolic thing to the Chun. It's okay. You can say it's a very real establishment of God's sovereignty, but how afterwards then we're kind of dealing with the results of not being prepared, we'll say, fully prepared, and we had the raid on the palace in Chungpyeong by the Korean authorities investigating, scandals. This is kind of normal everyday Korean politics, and particularly the tension between North Korea, South Korea, and the communists and all that, which is responsible in many ways for the assassination of Abe. It's China's CCP, I believe is definitely behind that, communists. So where's our responsibility in all that? Where's Korea's responsibility? And I was reflecting on that because, you can demonize and point fingers at people, but what is my responsibility? What is our responsibility as a community? I thought, oh, this is great, this service, because you can flick it on there. It's like a wake-up call for us as a church. Like, have we been doing enough actually to support True Mother? Yeah, but also Japan. Why aren't we actually? I don't want to dwell on this too much because I got into trouble with this before for criticizing. I don't mean our leaders here in Ireland. I'm very happy to do that anytime, but even in trouble with Europe. Yeah, it's no problem. I mean, for not maybe going to the embassies and protesting in the embassies in Paris and London and places like that. Why aren't we doing that? Japanese embassies. The one thing that could make a difference, looks like there's no appetite for it, So that was my takeaway. But then I had to reflect and repent. Well, maybe I don't know all the answers. Maybe I should listen to the leaders. Maybe they know better. Maybe the VIP, influencing the VIPs is a better way to go. Who's to say that anyone will even notice if we're there at the embassies? It's a crowded kind of, the protesting space is a crowded space. It's occupied currently by the Palestinians and the anti-Israel mob. So much so that Israel even closed its embassy in Ireland. I know why they closed the embassy, because they don't want the world to see these protests outside the embassy in Dublin. Would you blame them? I mean, it's very hard to defend the actions of these people. But again, what is my responsibility? And what is our responsibility? And I had to reflect on that. You can flick it on again there, Dylan. This pastor in Korea said we have to reflect about our attitude and defending true parents and defending, like, I also don't, I'm not totally in tune with that idea of defending our churches and establishments. A very good service given by Eli a couple of weeks ago talked about how proud he was of the establishment, of the church as an establishment. And I had some good takeaways from that myself. I felt, yeah, I am proud of True Parents and I'm proud of what we've achieved. And Mandy talked about that last week as well, that we made a good stab at it, she said. They made a good stab at it. They weren't perfect, talking about the early members and going through the history and the archives. You can see even here in Ireland, the incredible persecution actually that members had to endure. People sitting in this room, I don't know how they did it. I don't know how they're still here, survivors. To say that they made a good stab at it is a total understatement, but I know where you're coming from. Like, as people who joined in the 90s, even we got a sense, we got a little taste of it. Second gen maybe get a little sense of it. But actually, we know nothing about what it was really like. And going through the archives and the newspaper cuttings every day in every paper, it's almost like the main headline. This goes on for months, might die down for a while, but then it comes back again. It's like you're the butt of every joke, and you're the demon. You're the okay. I complain about not having difficulties getting work and stuff like that, maybe because I'm out and proud as a unificationist, but actually it's nothing compared to what the career destruction that some members suffered and the reputational damage. Those that were willing to put their head on the block. And I really admire those who didn't have a mission or weren't getting paid by the church, by the established church. That's why I'm a little bit critical sometimes. I would never defend an establishment just for the sake of it. You know, I have to look at the details case by case. What's the fact here? Look at the Catholic Church, for example. I mean, if you were a devout believer in the Catholic Church years ago, you can flick that on, Dylan. Actually, you can even close it if you like, because I think it might be distracting. The Catholic Church, at the time when we were being heavily persecuted in the 70s, and I'm talking from a research point of view, and there's people like John and James and others and Ty who were there, who lived through it, and Bruno. The Catholic Church was still held in high esteem, and in a sense that was part of the problem, because Bishop Lucy down in Cork, for example, was some man for attacking our church where we were headquarters at the time. And I can see I'm starting to go through that phase now of looking through those clippings where he's attacking our church. And what's he afraid of? Like, are we so big and powerful? You know, we were probably not much bigger than we are today, but the spirit was different because we were young and we were new. And the first gen, I mean, second gen, of course, still have hopefully a lot of inspiration and a lot of power. But where was the threat to the church? You know, the church was already, you could start to see the signs of the scandals and the corruption within the Catholic Church. I'm not saying the Catholic Church is a totally corrupt institution, by the way. There's many good things in it. But when you see Bishop Casey's body being disinterred from the crypt in Galway Cathedral, that's shocking if you're a Catholic. Bishop Eamon Casey, who was John the Baptist figure to the Pope when he came in 1979, who was dancing on the stage at the Papal Cross, or was it in Galway when he came to, when the Pope came to Galway? You remember that? Bishop Casey, he was the cool bishop. You heard of the cool priest? Well, he was the cool bishop. Everyone loved him. He was so jovial. The dancing bishop. It's like an episode of Father Ted, right? But no, but he was like. And also Brian Darcy, who everybody loves, this darling of the media up in Enniskillen. Potential John the Baptist figure for our true parents, but criticised us heavily back at the time, a couple of articles. So if it's popularity you're looking for, you're in the wrong church. And if it's, you know, but that's the life of, we'll say, the chosen people. And you know, people laugh at that idea. You think you're special, you think you're a chosen people, but that's a cross. Like, that's not a crown. It can be a crown eventually, but you might not wear that crown until you go to the spirit world. It could be you, like as a tribal Messiah, I mean, somebody who's imitating the true parents, imitating Christ. This is our mission and our calling as blessed families, as blessed couples. So when we have a crisis like we have, it's easy to point fingers and to criticize each other and say, you should have done that. If you'd only done that, you know, if you'd only just protested at the embassies, this wouldn't have happened. Because, you know, it's easy to judge other people and to see, you know, that you know better. But actually, how does God work? God works through the Holy Spirit and unity, I believe. You know, even if you don't agree with the tactics, actually, if you can unite. That was what we believed when we joined the church, if you can unite. Of course, this then became distorted, and people started to say, oh, can't unite with that person, and I have my own responsibility, and I'm a tribal Messiah, and I'm the fourth Adam and the fourth Eve, and I know what's right. I follow my conscience. I don't have to listen to the leader. I don't have to listen, you know, be part of this community. It can take it to its extreme. Like, how do you discern when to follow the leader if you feel in your heart and your bones that this is nonsense, you know? So I think in our movement, you know, worldwide, we're having these times of crisis when, you know, people are not down with the new message or the new theology, or they're not down with directions or coming from leadership, and then they think, yeah, that's okay. I'm okay. I know I have God. But we know ourselves. I know myself when I experience God, when I have God in my heart, when I feel peace. Yeah. When I feel I'm a channel of peace. I'm not saying towards other people, they probably never feel that for me, but to myself. Can I live with myself? Thank you. Yeah. So if I hate You, if I hate my neighbor, I'm resentful. Who's unhappy in that scenario? James isn't, because James is laughing at me. But I am, because I have resentment towards my brother. Yeah. I can forgive my brother, even if he doesn't think he's done anything wrong. And who benefits from that? Who benefits from that? Not James, me. Maybe James as well. I don't know. Yeah. So I think this idea that everyone is a child of God, everyone has God's perspective potentially. We can unite with them in the sense that we can love them and we can understand them, we can understand their heart. This is what true parents are preaching. It's not this Cain Abel direction. You have to do this, you have to do that. That age is gone. I do believe that age is gone. We have to discern what is right from from understanding God's heart of love for us and God's desire to be with us. And true parents are there to guide us. They're the example to guide us, to help us. True father for men, for fathers, for husbands, true mother for women, for wives, for daughters. And theology is divisive, as one of our great teachers over across the pond points out in his tales and stories. Yes, theology is very divisive, and doctrine is divisive, and catechism was divisive back in the day, talking about the Virgin Mary and all this sort of stuff. But uh, it is, it doesn't have to be. If we, as this great teacher says when he's instructing young people particularly, but also older people, he says, it's not what you believe, he says, it's what you do. Yeah. So then, if he believes that, it's not what you believe, your doctrine, it's what you do, it's how you live your life, how you practice true love, then theology is, I'm not saying it's not important at all, but it is definitely secondary to your actions. You can be an atheist. We know this, a humanist, an atheist, but live for the sake of others. Yeah? Even like a Mandela figure, for example, who sacrificed for his nation, who embraced the white people. He wasn't particularly religious. Actually, he was a communist, let's be honest about it. Marxist. Marxist. But was he a Marxist when he died? I don't think he was, after how many years in Robben Island. So I don't think Marxists are irredeemable. There's a generation, my father's generation, who were, whether they knew it or not, following that creed in the IRA, the official Sinn Féin. They were Marxists. They split over that. Are they condemned to hell just because of that label? Or is it possible for them to have a redemption and rebirth? Even Jerry Adams and people like that, I believe, must have had some sort. And now, I'm not saying that they're going around with clear consciences, you know. But for me, I think experiences shape you, and you can experience God. And in adversity, you can really experience God. We saw how after the victory in Jericho, we became, as mankind, as chosen people, because we're the inheritors of that, complacent. After the victory in Korea, I don't think we were that complacent, because after the Abe assassination, I don't know how anyone could have been complacent. Actually, what shocked me more than the raid in Korea was the victory in America in the court case. And I don't want to go into detail on it but for me, it's an example of, why does True Mother talk about Hyo Jeong, filial piety, all the time? What does that mean? Hyo Jeong means it's like extreme filial piety in some sense for me. That's my understanding of it. Everything when you go to Chongpyong is about Hyo Jeong this, Hyo Jeong that, Hyo Jeong institution. I was reflecting on this in preparation today, and I was trying to think, why always talk about Hyo Jeong, you know? And I was thinking, maybe this is a woman, a mother, who's had her heart broken by her children. I know true parents have fulfilled. I don't know, I believe, I have faith that true father is perfect in the sense that he's one with God. That's it. I don't know what if he plays golf or what his handicap is, or if he's able to, speak Chinese fluently or any of these. That's not perfection. Perfection is knowing God, being one in heart with God, not being able to violate that connection in any way through sin. Do we believe through mother? I believe through mothers like that, but a lot of people don't. And they get disenchanted with new doctrine. And I understand that. I actually can understand that totally. I really do. I mean, the Catholics, I believe, did this with Jesus to an extent, but certainly with Mary. They deified her. I don't know, was Mary perfect? I doubt it somehow. But that doesn't mean she wasn't a good person, Mother Mary, and that she couldn't manifest. 40 years ago, we had the moving statues in Ballinspittle. Was that real? Did that actually happen, or was that just mass psychosis? I think it depends on you. It depends on how prepared your heart was. If you went there with a pure heart and made conditions, I think you would have experienced God. I had a teacher in Westport where I went to school in the CBS who was not that religious, probably not religious at all. And he went down there to investigate this. So he comes back and he's sitting down at the class telling the maths teacher, a science teacher, and he's sitting down, and he was cool enough, this teacher, now, compared to some of them. He wasn't like one of the Christian brothers. He was married and a family man, and he was a bit skeptical about things. But it was the time, I suppose, 40 years ago, when most people gave religion the benefit of the doubt, actually. If they were in doubt, they'd kind of err on the side, well, it's probably, I'm better off to believe in this because, someday I want to go to the afterlife. I think it's better to have this than nothing. So he was telling me about his experiences down in Cork, telling the class about his experiences in Ballinspittle, and to find out did the statues move. And he was scratching his head. He wasn't sure. He thought, I think from my recollection, he thought he saw something, but he wasn't sure. See, when a crowd of people are gathered like that, a couple of hundred people, and they're all just standing there silently watching, waiting for the statue to move. I can imagine. Yeah. Some people will see it and some people won't. And is it the statue moving, or is it the spirit world, or is it just mass psychosis? This is faith, people. This happens all the time. Even the original apparitions of Mary and Knock and in Fatima and Lourdes, Catholics have a long tradition of making saints out of people because of miracles. And so you can't become a saint unless you've had a miracle or three attributed to you, you know? So I feel this Hyo Jeong idea, this filial piety is important. You may not understand, I may not understand the details of the doctrine, but actually it's not so important. I think the main message, even of the value of true parents from the viewpoint of heaven's providence, it's not a work of art theologically, certainly not. There's lots of flaws in it, it's done in a hurry. But I actually I boiled it down to 5 statements, 5 sentences. And for me, there's 100, 200 pages, whatever in it. I read it. It is repetitive. It's not a work of art. But for me, it's like somehow like a catechism. It's like a statement of True Mother's faith. And it's not for me. Okay, you can say doctrine isn't important and all. The Catholics love to say that, and the Protestants accuse them because the Protestants love the Bible and they think the Word of God and Christ is important and integral to the Bible. And I don't want to take away from that for Protestants, but coming from a Catholic background, I used to find that very condescending at times. My faith is less than yours because I didn't grow up reading the Bible, because I went to Mass and I listened to the priest. So is my faith less than a Calvinist or somebody, a Methodist or a Church of Ireland or a Presbyterian who reads the Bible? If you go to a Presbyterian church, there's no ornaments, there's no statues, it's bare. I mean, that's a beautiful aspect of worshiping God. Say in a Jewish setting, if you go to a temple, there's a particular environment, a particular way of worshiping God. So if you go to a mosque, we as unificationists have developed our own traditions. Some of us are not happy with the way it's developing, and I think that's important that everyone has a voice, that it be a broad church, that whatever part or charisma appeals to you. And in the Catholic Church, there's many In my house, there are many mansions, Jesus says. In the Catholic Church, there's many denominations. Even within the Catholic Church, there's even a denomination where they get married, where the priests get married, and that's sanctioned by Rome. They don't want to lose them because then they're no longer in communion with Rome. I think they come from the Eastern Catholic Church, which is very similar to the Orthodox. So I think as a unificationist, we have to be a little bit skeptical sometimes about what comes out of Korea because it's translated and it's said at a particular time in a particular context. I can give you numerous speeches from True Father where he said one thing one day. Mike Balcom last week was talking about asking people to study in UTS, in HJI, and he gave a talk about how Father was giving a speech one day about people with doctorates getting a doctorate. He said, I know what I do with that doctorate. He said, I'd take the thesis and I'd hang it up on the Jack's wall and I'd use it to wipe my arse with, he said. And within a few days, or it sounded like from the story, Mike Balcom was going to ask True Father to sign his thesis after completing his doctorate. But I thought it was very good the way he combined those two stories. So True Father one day is giving out about doctorates, but then it's okay if it's a HJI or a UTS doctorate, because that's his university. And he wants people with those qualifications to reach out to other academics. This is the purpose of it. This is why True Father set up all these, True Parents set up all these institutions, actually, to try and make inroads in society. So I don't want to harp on all day, I'll try and wrap up. Filial piety, Hyo Jeong, was what I wanted to say about True Mother. I'm sure her heart is broken, actually, particularly with members of her own family. And by no stretch of the imagination, we can say we have True Father and we have True Mother. They have achieved their mission as the second coming Messiah and as the only begotten daughter, as she calls herself, as a Holy Mother Han, whatever she wants to call herself. And I am sad about one thing, and that's that we no longer are in the age of praying in the name of True Parents. But then we were already not in that age because we were supposed to be praying in our own names as blessed central families, actually. So the little addition of Holy Mother Han, people struggle with that. Maybe I do also. But maybe I want to have faith and I want to believe because I trust in God and I want to have filial piety and I want to have Hyo Jeong. Maybe Hyo Jeong, the age of attendance, was talked about here by John 2 weeks ago. This is the justification of the age, attending the living Christ. What's the difference between us and Christians? Actually, we have the living physical Christ. We still have that in True Mother. We may disagree as to the how divine we think she is. She's just a woman, yeah. But maybe a perfect woman, maybe in the sense perfect as united with God. Well, what's wrong with that? Don't we not all want that? Can we not achieve? Maybe we think it's not achievable. I don't think it's achievable for me. James is shaking his head. He's already there. Okay, so even James can do it. Hallelujah. Rose can testify to that. She's on the way. She's nearly there. She's nearly there. So yeah, I think the idea of Hyo Jeong, finally, to wrap up, is very important. And I understand now why True Mother was emphasizing it. It's in a sense, maybe she didn't foreshadow all the disunity in the True family because it was already happening, even when True Father was alive, actually. The only time he ever called anybody a Satan that I remember, he did it to one brother who I will not mention from Korea, a great leader. I think he was in Ireland once, introducing True Mother, or John, you probably remember. Anyway, I was very shocked actually when he said that. But given what all this happened since, I can see why True Father. Maybe that was True Father's moment in the temple when he threw, like when Jesus threw the merchants out of the temple. This is one point where Jesus is criticized. I'm not sure was a True Father could even criticize him for doing that he shouldn't have done that. Anger, yeah, like Moses hit the stone in anger, or killed the Egyptian. Jesus casting the merchants out of the temple grounds when they were there selling their wares. When true father criticized and called this brother, father-in-law of one of the two children, as Satan, Judas. So I was very shocked that true father did that, but now I somehow wonder, was that wrong to do that or not? I'm not saying that it doesn't mean that means he's not at one with God for saying such a thing, just like Jesus. Maybe it's righteous anger, maybe it's justified, maybe there is a place for that even in a perfect person. Who am I to judge? I'm not anybody. But the point for me is the lack of filial piety that comes through these disunities is apparent. And I think that if there's one thing we can help to justify ourselves in this age, in terms of the age of attendance, it is in showing this Hyo Jeong, and it finally it's starting to dawn on me. The one thing that's missing in God's providence, the next step is the true family, because that has not been established. So hopefully it will be soon. I'm sure that will ease true father and true mother's heart. And Shin Chol maybe can be the one to do that. They might have to skip that generation. And I'm not saying all the true children are bad. Some of them are very good. But in terms of those that had providential missions and responsibilities, people that true mother can stand up and testify to as members of the true family, like she did actually during her tour. Was it in one of her tours? She talked about the true family. I'm very proud of them. So I'm sure that's heartbreaking for her to experience this. And it's been repeated and doubled down on recently, the attacks on her, which are not helped by some suspect theology. But at the same time, it's the heart behind it that's important, because doctrine is not as important as attendance, filial piety, but as what you do. So what you do is much more important than what you believe, to paraphrase that great teacher across the water, Mr. Haynes. Yeah, I close it there. Please join me in prayer. Heavenly Parent, thank you that we can gather together as a community of unificationists this morning in Ireland, and that we have very devout brothers and sisters who are walking this path for many years, trying to understand how we can attend our true parents, how we can attend you, how we can understand your heart. Help us to understand your heart. Forgive us for our shortcomings towards you, towards each other, for our disunities, for our jealousies, and for our fighting, and for often prioritizing external things. Help us to learn from the great leaders and from the not so great leaders of the past, from the Israelites, from the chosen people, as to our path and how we can focus on what's important, Heavenly Parent, because we are all answerable to you, Heavenly Parent, at the end. And we know that building a true family has been the ideal. You want to live in a true family on earth, and you have been denied this for so long, Heavenly Parent. Help us to do what we can to establish in our own families as much as we can 3 generations and more, Heavenly Parent, and tribes, and to save this nation, Heavenly Parent, from destruction, and to give it the light of hope, of truth, of our true parents, and attend our true mother in this time when she is alive, because we don't know how long it will last. So please guide us, and thank you. I want to ask you to join us on this Sunday and celebrate with us. And I want to pray and report this in my name, Colm of the County Blessed family, in the name of the second coming Messiah, Father Moon, and in the name of Holy Mother Han, I pray. Adieu.